Hey everyone, this is Alan Fire from Visionary Fire. Welcome back to another Stardust tutorial. Today I am very excited because we'll be doing something very exciting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Alright, we'll be creating fire with Stardust. Stardust is a plugin, a third-party plugin that does not come with After Effects by default, but you can download it from the website superluminal.tv. So yes, fire. Fire is so amazing, so energetic, visually stunning, all that stuff. So this tutorial is very special to me. And I also hope that the time you spend watching this episode will really benefit you even beyond creating this one specific effect. Because we'll be exploring into all the possibilities of Stardust and connecting our minds to the controls and tools of this software to manifest our imagination into digital reality. See, that's what visual effects and motion graphics is all about. But also, software has an imagination of its own, if you understand what I mean by that. It's very possible to come out with a result that's different and better than what you would expected. So it's also about, I guess, the intelligence of the software. But anyway, I'm so excited to create this fire effect. Let's begin. Okay, so you can see that we've already got a little scene set up here. We've got this S logo here, and this is what we're going to be adding fire to. And everything you see here was created with Stardust. So first off, we have this layer here, and this is just a solid layer with this S-shaped mask on it. How we do this, let's just say we grab a text tool, type in a letter like S, and then we can just click on this letter, go to Layer, Auto Trace, hit OK, boom. That creates a layer with the mask around the shape of our text. So that's really cool. That's how we created this S-shaped mask. So we use that to create this 3D logo. And again, that was with Stardust. So we want to add fire to this logo. So that's the objective of this tutorial. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a new solid because we have to have a solid to apply the Stardust effect to. So let's call this Stardust. Let's add Stardust actually. Actually, I'll rename this layer to fire because this is going to be the fire. So I'm going to put it actually below the background, and the background's not going to cover this fire because the background's on an add blending mode. If you understand the way operations work, it's just going to add the colors together, and we'll still see our fire here. So there we go. We got some fire. We're done. Look at that. Doesn't that look like fire? Not quite. We might need to make a few, make a few small detail adjustments, right? No, we're going to change this. It's going to look like fire. So we're going to go to the emitter type. Let's change this from point to text/mask because we're going to use this S mask here to define where the particles emit from, where the fire is burning from. So it needs to know how to find the right text/mask. So we need to say what layer that the mask is on because it doesn't know where to look for it. So we'll go down here to layer properties. For the layer, we'll choose letter S. So it goes to this letter S layer and it finds the mask. So now it's going to be emitting from that S mask shape. You can see here. But let's what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is turn down the speed all the way down to 0. And so in a lot of controlled particle simulation situations, we're going to turn the speed all the way down to 0. And the reason we do this is because the speed essentially just disperses the particles from our control. Speed is very useful in lots of situations, don't get me wrong, but in a lot of controlled turbulent situations, we want to keep the speed all the way down to 0 so we can basically, because we don't want the speed to disperse the particles from our control. There we go. We have some particles emitting from that S shape. And let's just bring up these particles times 1,000. So let's add 3 zeros to the particles per second. We've got a lot of particles being emitted there. And let's make some adjustments to the particle settings. So let's go to the particle properties. Let's turn the size down to about maybe 3. And let's turn the particle feather all the way up so the particles blend better. Let me guys tell you something about the world. So the way fire works is it actually burns, it goes upward. Just the gravity, buoyancy, heat, all that stuff, the fire actually burns upward. Maybe in Earth 2.0 fire burns downward, but in this part of town fire actually burns upward. So we need to make these particles move upward. So let's drag in a force node and we'll connect this to the particles. So it's like a train. It's emitter, particle, force. We can define the order that these different nodes are executed. So we have so much control. This is making me so excited. I probably need to calm down before I do something weird. Alright, so let's turn the wind Y to maybe minus 400. And that's going to make these particles blow upward. Alright, and let's turn down the life of these particles because I'll tell you, these things are just never dying out. They're going up and they just never stop. So we want our fire to die out. These are like Methuselah particles. So let's turn the life of these particles down to about 0.35. And because the particles are moving up at a good speed, it's just that they didn't die out quick enough. So you just gotta find that balance between how fast the particles are moving up and how long their life is to define how high the fire is gonna go up. So there, I think that looks pretty good. And let's increase the particles per second. There's still not enough particles. Let's add another 0 to this. And as we go along, we'll probably add more and more particles. I don't know. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do. This is looking cool, but we need to make these particles fade out because they just suddenly end like there, boom, not there, it just disappears. We don't want that. We want the fire to fade out. So let's go to the particle settings, and let's go to the overlife, and we'll go to the opacity. So we'll make the opacity fade out over the particle's life. So just like that, this is the beginning of the particle's life, and this is the end of its life. So there we go. It's just gonna fade out. Simple linear fade out. And let's also turn down the opacity of these particles. Maybe let's do like 40. Oh, that looks good. So we got this particle structure right for the turbulence. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do next. We're gonna add turbulence to the structure. It's just calling us to add some turbulence, right? Just this nice flat structure. We're ready to add some texture, some turbulence. So let's drag in a turbulence node. And by the way, if you don't know what a turbulence node does, it adds turbulence. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect this after to the force node. And let's turn up the position offset to about 200. Alright, so yeah, there we go. Turbulence looks cool, right? It looks just like fire. Okay, so what we're going to be focusing on in this part of the tutorial is how to make your turbulence look luscious. We're going to make this look so good. That's the purpose. We're going to learn how to make turbulence look so dynamic and luscious and turbulent, all that cool stuff. So, because right now I'm just not feeling it. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the turbulence over life, and for this first point here, we'll bring it all the way down. So there's going to be no turbulence at the beginning of the particle's life, and as it gets older, the particle's going to be more and more affected by the turbulence. And the second tip is to make the noise scale right. So in this case, we want to bring up the noise scale to maybe something like 500. So look at that. Now we can actually start seeing the shape of that turbulence. Okay, looking much better. Now the third thing, this is really important also. It may be something a lot of people don't think about, but we're going to go up here to the emitter, and we're going to change the size Z to 0. And so the size Z is like the depth, because depth kind of blends our turbulence. See, we have turbulence coming on in the foreground, and then turbulence in the background. It just kind of blends together and averages out to much less clear shaped turbulence. So when we turn that size Z down, we have this clear, just single sheet without any depth, and we just have that one layer of solid turbulence. So that's the third tip, is to change the size in Z. Okay, so now this turbulence is looking pretty good, but we have one problem. See, look at this. The turbulence is static. That is a serious issue. One of the keys to dynamic, luscious turbulence is having that movement, dynamic, luscious movement. So how are we going to give this movement? Well, we're going to animate the fractal offset Y. The Y-axis is the vertical axis, and we want this turbulence to move up with the particle. Now, it's actually kind of difficult to make the turbulent offset Y match the upward motion of the particles. So we'll have to do this with an expression, because keyframes are just too difficult to get perfect. So what we're going to do, a lot of people are scared of expressions, I know. So what we're going to do is hold alternate, click the stopwatch, fractal offset Y. Oh my goodness, an expression. Oh, I thought it was going to be scary. Never mind, it's not scary. So it's just an expression. So what we're going to do, we're going to have the right expression in the description of this video. I'll make sure it gets in the description so you can have access to it. And basically just paste that description right here in this text box. And what it's going to do is make your fractal offset Y move up at the right speed relative to your wind Y. Alright, so it's going to move the same speed as the wind. So I'll just do the expression real quick. We'll type in time, and we'll multiply this by the wind Y speed, and we're going to make this negative because it moved the wrong direction. But we also have to divide it by the size of the noise scale, and then we'll multiply this by 100 because we don't want it to divide by 500. We just want it to divide by 5, and we got to make this 10 times less to make it match properly. Okay, there we go. That's the expression if you want to make it yourself. But you'll see that this fractal offset Y now perfectly matches the upward motion of the particles, and it looks so unrealistically luscious, like unbelievably luscious. Not unrealistic. That's a bad term to use in visual effects, right? But then again, Stardust isn't really made to make things look realistic. It's just got this cool motion graphics feel. So I just want you to check out how luscious this turbulence is now. Oh my goodness. This is making me too excited. Look at that level of lusciousness. Holy guacamole. Maybe some of you guys didn't see all those moves we pulled, but this just ended out to be extremely luscious. So now what we're going to do, we're almost finished here. But we're going to do a couple more things. We want to duplicate this turbulence because there isn't enough of that turbulence detail. It's just too large turbulence. So we're actually going to duplicate this and hit Control D. So let's start off by changing the noise scale. Let's change this down to 300. Give it some nice variation. Change the fractal offset Z just to make it random. And let's turn down the position offset maybe to like 125. So we have 2 layers of turbulence, and that's the cool thing about Stardust. It doesn't matter how many nodes we add in, we can just keep adding more turbulence nodes. There's no limits to what we can do, how many nodes we add in, what order we put them in. You're just completely flexible, and that's just so amazing. Okay, so now what I want to do is make this turbulence, so this is going to be cool. I want to make this turbulence more like vertical turbulence and less even, if you know what I mean. Like I want it to be kind of these vertical streams of turbulence. And that's kind of what fire is, because since fire moves upward, it's kind of like in vertical streams. And this is actually in general a useful technique in other visual effects situations. So pay attention to this, because this is gonna really add something to your skill set inventory. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna disconnect this turbulence to this force, and we're gonna put between this a transform node. So we're going to connect the transform here and then connect it here. And what we're actually going to do is increase the scale X of this transform node. We're going to do like maybe 150. Alright, so the turbulence doesn't change, but the size of this S changes. But what we can do is actually add a transform node after the turbulence and then make the scale right. And what that's going to do is squeeze the turbulence horizontally. Check this out. So we did 150, so we got to divide by 1.5. Scale X, let's do divided by 1.5. And check that out. So we scaled it up and then we scaled it back down, but since the turbulence was done between those two processes, the turbulence got squeezed as we scaled it back down. Because the turbulence wasn't affected by this transform node, but it was by this transform node. And so now we kind of have this vertical turbulence, and that looks more like fire. That has a more fiery nature. Okay, look at that. That's looking so good, so utterly luscious. But I'm going to tell you, we're going to do one thing, one little adjustment that's going to make this look way better. And what that is, let's go up here to the Stardust effect here, and let's go to the render settings. And what we'll do is turn on the motion blur. So turn this on, turn on the checkbox. That's going to completely transform. It's going to blend the particles together. And now it looks more like a fire that blend. It's not like particles. It's now like blended, moving fluid like fire. That's so awesome. And just do it by one click. Just turn on the motion blur. So awesome. And wow, this is looking so good. So I'm going to turn up the scale. I might turn up the opacity or maybe just the size of these particles. But I just want to add a little more opacity, make it a little thicker. And this just depends on how many particles you have, the size of them, the opacity. Just that all those are factors defining how thick it's going to look. So guys, I think we have a pretty good fire structure here. Now we're ready for kind of the fun part, the colory fun part, because we're about to add some color and glow to this fire. Like I said, this is the colory fun part, right? You guys like that pun there? Good, because it wasn't a very good pun. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to create an adjustment layer, Control Alternate Y. That's the shortcut for it. I highly recommend shortcuts. I don't know if I already said that in this tutorial, but I really do. Faster editing is very important to me, because the faster you can edit, the more it can match your train of thought, and the more possibilities you'll get to try, the more creative you'll be able to be. That's why I really recommend learning shortcuts. So I'm going to name this color, and what I'm going to do is add a levels effect, because I want to make sure this is pure white here. Because sometimes the motion blur just brings down the overall opacity, so we got to bring that back up. Let's add the levels effect to this color adjustment layer. And the good thing about levels is that you can see the information on this graph right here. So let's go to alpha, and you can see where the colors end. We just want to crush this so that they're pure white. Okay, so there we go. There's a before and after. And to color this, we need to make sure that's only colors and no transparency. So we need to fill this transparency in with black. So let's type in solid composite. And a solid composite just fills in the transparency with whatever color. So let's just do black. And that's going to fill that transparency with that black color. This is then apply a curves effect, and this is what we're going to use to give the flames their actual color, along with the glow. So let's go to the red, let's bring this up, let's go to the blue, bring it down, and then for the green, we'll just add a little bit to the highlights and take away from the shadows, so it adds a little contrast there. Alright, and that looks pretty good. We don't have to make this too vibrant, because a lot of the color is actually going to come from the glow. Like a lightsaber. If you look at it like a lightsaber, the actual sword is white, but then the color is kind of in the glow. So we'll type in the glow effect. We'll apply this after the curves. And for the glow radius, let's do about 100, something like that. And then we'll change the glow operation to screen. Let's just do our own custom colors. So for the glow colors, let's do colors A and B. And for the color looping, let's do A is greater than B. And for color B, let's do a little bit more of an orange, yellow. And then for the color A, let's do more of a brighter yellow. Looks great, and it's always good to add multiple layers of glow. So we're gonna duplicate this glow. Hit Control D. We're gonna make this a much broader glow. So let's turn this radius up to something like 250. So that looks like a pretty nice glow there. Okay, so let's see how it looks with the background and logo. Wow, that is really cool business right there. So in the original example, you'll see that there's actually around the edges of this S logo, there's some really cool, misty, smoky, fiery stuff. You can see it around the edges of this S logo. So that's really cool. I'm going to show you guys how to create that with Stardust also. So it's really easy. We're going to use a Stardust preset, and we can customize this preset to fit our scene. And you'll see that presets are great building blocks for creativity, building your scene, and just inspires ideas, and these presets just bring the Stardust experience to the next level. So let's call this Edge Smoke. It's smoke, why not? Okay, so then we'll go ahead and apply Stardust to this layer. So type in Stardust, apply it to the Edge Smoke layer, and like I said before, we're going to use a preset. So let's click on one of these icons here. This is how we access the presets, and then we'll go into the Fire and Smoke category. And then choose the textures folder, and what we'll choose is Smoke Mask Outline. This preset, hit replace, and you can see it loads in this really cool scene. But I really like this preset. You can see how well these elements blend together and how luscious each one of them are. But we're going to apply this around the edges of our S logo. So to do that, we had to do the same thing we did before. I go to the emitter. This is the emitter here. And change the layer to letter S, and that will find the mask of our letter S layer. And we actually want to change this. See that here in the path properties, we want to change this from edge weighted to volume, so it does anywhere inside the mask. Looks so cool. And maybe we can just increase the particles per second here also. It's maybe like 1500, so a little bit more particles. And you can see this blends really nicely with the fire. Look at that. Wow, that edge smoke looks so good with the fire. Let's see how it looks with the rest of the scene. Looks so awesome. And also, by the way, we want to delete this heart saw that the preset automatically created. So let's just delete that, because we're using the S rather than the heart shape. And just to fill in the gaps a little bit, I'm thinking we can increase the size of these particles. We could do this by going to the particle node and just changing the size here. So that would be difficult. There's several different particle nodes. It would be difficult to go through each one and do it manually. There's actually a better way we can do this. So what we can do is drag in a transform node. And you'll see here one of the parameters is particle scale. And this is really cool because this differs from like this parameter here, scale X. The scale X would change the whole structure of the scene. It would scale the whole structure of the scene. But particle scale just increases the scale of every particle that this transform is connected to. So we can just change this particle scale value to something like 150. And that's just going to fill in those gaps a little bit and blend everything together. So that's a really cool technique. Remember that particle scale. We've also got particle opacity. A lot of cool settings there. Oh, and there's one more thing I want to show you guys. We also had this in the final result, but that's these sparks here. So these were also created with a Stardust preset. Again, these presets for Stardust are great building blocks. It can save you a lot of time, and it can definitely jumpstart your creative process. So if we go in here, click on one of these images to open up the preset browser, you can find the sparks in the fire and smoke, and you can see this template here, Bonfire 01. So we can hit replace. And then when we do that, make sure and change your emitter to this S emitter, and there we go. We have some awesome sparks, just as easy as that. So keep an eye on those presets. They can really help you out in your editing process. Alright, so that's it. We've come to the end of this episode. Have a good darn look at this final result. So bright, colorful, energetic, dynamic, turbulent, just luscious, customizable to any logo or shape. That's so awesome. But anyway, we're done with all the learning, and while that was so fun growing in our knowledge and abilities, it's time to review and celebrate what we've just put our efforts into. We covered the subject of mask emitters. We talked about how to control your particle simulations. We went over turbulence, and more importantly, how to make luscious dynamic turbulence. We did that cool turbulence scale technique that generalizes into other situations where we can transform the geometry of the effect rather than the geometry of what's being affected. We went over color and glow, which was so pleasant and satisfying, and then we talked about the power of presets as we use them to create the fiery smoke stuff around the edges of the logo and the sparks. Okay, so I really hope I was able to make this tutorial a valuable use of your time. Hopefully your skill set inventory is now larger and healthier. My name is Alan Fire, and until next time, I'll leave you to it.